Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on Python where we are continuing with our basics. We will be talking about strings today, text, manipulation, the wonderful world of print statements and input statements. So let's jump into it. We're going to go into our Jupyter Notebook once again. If you're not familiar with how to get your Jupyter Notebook started, go ahead and check out one of the previous videos. Let's get to it. All right, we have, adjust. There we go. We're going to jump into our Jupyter Notebook and talk about strings. So strings are essentially how we call text that our code uses to differ it from the actual code we're writing and the comments in our code. So you can declare strings in Python with either double quotes, right? So this is a string. You can also use single quotes. So this is also a valid string. You can, if you recall, we have a type function, which is one of the built-in functions in Python. And this will tell us that the type of our variable x is a string, str in Python. If you remember from our previous tutorial, you can convert data types. So if you wanted to let's say we had x is 42, the integer 42. So the type of x is an integer, but we can convert x to a string, and you'll see that the number 42 has the single quotes around it. This is indicating that it is a string instead of an integer. So this, if we say x is, say, string of 42, right? Then if you have something like x plus x, it's going to behave differently, right? It's going to add two strings together, which is called concatenation, and we'll get to this in a second, but it's not going to behave as if you added the numbers 42 and 42 together. So, up to this point, we've been typing in variables like directly into the command line or your IPython terminal or the Jupyter Notebook, and it gives us the output automatically in the return. But in code you write and programs, you're not going to be entering code line by line like this. So what we have available to print information to the screen or terminal is the built-in function called the print statement. So you can do print x, and this is going to do essentially a very similar thing, but you note it leaves off the single quotes. That's because the print statement, or the print function, is always going to print a string to the terminal. So what are some other scenarios where you might use the print statement? Well, if you have some code that you want to see maybe what the value of variables are, or some data as it changes throughout a series of steps. So let's go ahead and define a simple function called myFunction. We'll use another doc string here. So this is going to be an example function that doesn't return anything, but prints to the terminal. Okay, so that's just our help function or our help text, and we can say we're going to say x is 42 again. So let's say print x. So we're going to print the value of x to the console at this point in the code. And then we're going to reassign x. We're going to give x a new value at this point. And in this case, we're just going to say double the value of x. So now I want to have the code print out the new value of x. So I can do that here. And then, so we've declared our function. We're going to then call our function, and we see that it prints two lines, the value of x at the first print statement, and then the value of x, so the value of x at the first print statement, and the value of x at the second one. Oops. The second one, so that's the 84, as opposed to the 42. So we saw that you can use single and double quotes in strings. What happens if you want to print some text that actually has quotes in it? Well, what you can do is, first let me show you what happens when it goes wrong. So you have a string. Oh, typing is hard. Everyone loves, say, air quotes, right? Right, so you want these quotes in your text. Well, if you do this, right, you're going to get a syntax error, right? Basically, the quotes are defining the start and the end of the string, and so it thinks like this is a string and this latter half is a string, but it thinks this air quotes part is code. So one thing you could do is if you declare a string with double quotes, you can use single quotes inside the string. Right, so this works. Alternatively, if you started it with single quotes, you can use double quotes inside the string. I'm not doing it right. Right? But another thing you can do is what's called an escape character or an escape sequence. So let's say we are using our double quotes. Everyone loves. So what you can do is this slash character, right? And you can do put the quote marker. You can say air quotes. You can then escape the second quotes, and then have the rest of the text. And so what this is doing is it's saying, I want to actually use these quotes, this symbol in my text. Don't treat it as a piece of code that's declaring the end of your string. So another scenario where you want to use an escape character, right, is if you want to have a string that takes place on multiple lines, right? So you want a line break in your code. You can say, so this sentence is on the first line, and then we're going to use a /n. Now /n is the line break character, so anything after this /n is going to take place on the second line. So this sentence is on the second line, right? So we would expect this to print on 2 lines, and it does. There we go. All right, so another way of doing the same thing, of having multiple lines, is to use the triple quotes that we kind of saw in our doc string earlier, this thing here, but you can also use that in your code. You can say print, you can use triple quotes, right? And so this is going to preserve line breaks in the code. So our first line, we would expect this to be on our second line, and we can also preserve like tabs. So if I hit tabbed, and this would be the third line in our code. Right? Okay, so this is operating as we would expect. So what else can we do with strings? We can manipulate strings once we have them in our variable in a lot of different ways. So let's go through a few examples. The first thing we can do, I'm going to introduce, well, let's declare a string, right? Let's have a string. So let's say hello and welcome to Modern Coder IO. Okay, so that's my variable. I'm just calling it my string. And we can use this len or length function to calculate the length, the number of characters in our string. So in this case, we have a string that has 36 characters. So this is going to include white space characters. So we mentioned earlier that you can concatenate strings. You can combine strings together in different chunks. So we can say that a new string is going to be equal to the value of our previous string, right, which we called my string. So that was hello and welcome to Modern Coder IO. So you can say, I hope you are enjoying watching this video. And then when we print our new string, so we're using the plus operator here, like the addition operator. So plus is going to combine these two strings. Now, something we want to note is it's you have to add extra white space. So we're going to add a little piece of white space here. And when we print this, we'll get both strings combined in our new variable. Something else you can do is duplicate strings. So let's call a string called double me and show me twice, right? So that's the name of our string. We can then say double me multiplied by 2. Let's see, just do 2. All right, you can use any number, but we're just going to use the multiplication operator and double it. Show me twice, show me twice. So that operates as we expect. What else can we do? Let's say we have our, we want to break up a string. Maybe it's a long string. We want to break it up into pieces. You might use this for a URL or an email, or you want to break up different pieces of a phone number. But in a simple example, we can use our myString, right? And we can use this split method, right? So we access this, we call .split on our string object that we're interested in. And we can say, I want to break this up at every single white space, or every space. So we're going to break it up into a list of words. Now we haven't gotten to lists yet, but we will in a future tutorial, and this is just kind of what they look like. They're in these brackets, and each item in the string is an element. And so we've just broken it up into the individual words, one string into a list of 5 strings, smaller strings. What else can we do? We can manipulate the case of a string. So we can say print myString. But let's bring everything to lowercase, right? That didn't work. So there you go. We changed the case. All the characters are now lowercase. We can do the same thing with uppercase, with the upper method. And then there are other options. If you do myString and you hit the dot character, then you hit tab, you can get some sort of coding assistance. So we can see that there's quite a few methods, and there's plenty of, you can play around with them. But in this case, I want to try this title, right? This title case. So in this case, it's going to change it's going to capitalize the first character of each word in our string. What else can we do? Okay. So we want to, what if we want to get information from the user, right? Say their name, their phone number, their email. We can use the input method, or excuse me, the built-in input function, right? And this will prompt the user to enter some information, and this is always given back to us as a string. So let's say we have a variable called user's name, and we want to call input. So we can do this, and it'll ask us for our name, and we hit enter, right? And so after this, we can say, hey, what's my user's name? I can print out the value, and anytime I use this variable user's name, it'll have the value of the string, in this case Daniel. Something else you can do, let's just repeat this. We can say input, we can give it a prompt, right? We can pass a string to input, enter your name, and we're going to note this little extra space here to make it look pretty. And then it'll give you this prompt, enter your name. So this is helping inform the user what you're looking for. And once again, we have entered our username. So what happens in the case, one more example, what happens in the case where someone puts in like a bunch of extra like white space, like they are tired and they lean their elbow on the space bar and they've got a bunch of junk, but you want a nice clean username in your code for whatever reason. Enter name. Enter your name. Okay. So we do this. Let's say, I got a bunch of white spaces. My name is over here, and there's a bunch of extra white spaces, right? So now when we print username, right? It's just, there's a bunch of extra white space. The length of the username is 23 characters, but it should be 3, right? What can we do? Well, we can say, we can do a string manipulation. In this case, we're going to reassign it to username. We're going to say the previous value of username. We're going to strip the white space from it. So this is just the strip method. And then when we print our username, right? And then we're also going to print the length of, I want to know how long it is now, right? So there we go. It's removed the beginning white space. It's removed the end white space. And it's now only 3 characters long. It's just the characters we care about. Cool. So moving on, we can do something called, well, here's the scenario. You've entered information in your code. You've got someone's username, their email, maybe their phone number. You've got other pieces of information from the database, and you want to display some of this to the user. How do you put that information in your strings? Well, you can do what's called string formatting. So there's going to be two methods. We're going to use the .format method at the start, and then we're also going to use what's called f strings. So it's just a different way. Now, f strings are only available in Python 3.6 and later. The .format method is been around for a lot longer. So let's go ahead and show the .format method first. Okay. So let's say we have a formatted string. How would we do this? Well, we start with our quotes, whether you're single or double quotes. So we can say hello. And then we use these curly brackets here, right? And so this is going to be a placeholder, also called a replacement field. And then we can continue with our string. Welcome to your home page, right? This is going to be our message. So using .format, we hit at the end of our string, we say .format, and then the arguments we pass into .format are going to be used in our placeholders. In this case, we have one placeholder, so we're going to pass one argument. In this case, our variable user's name from before. And then we're going to print our formatted string. Oh, I got two different variables, username and user's name. That's fine. User's name is my full name, or the non-nickname name. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to your homepage. All right, so this works. What if we want to pass multiple pieces of information into our string? So let's do some copy paste. Let's give it a different string. Let's say we're going to add a placeholder here. And maybe this might be someone's name, like it's a greeting. The year is, okay, there's another placeholder. And you love something here, okay? So these placeholders are going to correspond to the order of the arguments you pass into the .format method. We are going to say the user's name is the first one, right? We're going to put a number for the year. The year is 2020. And what do I love? I love coffee. There you go. We've used multiple pieces, multiple variables or values, and it's placed them in order of the placeholders in our string. What if we want to use a variable multiple times in the same string? Or what if we want to use them in an order that's different than the order of the arguments? We can do that. Let me show you. All right, so starting again, we can say in the beginning there was something. Okay, we're going to give it the number 2. And so basically what we're doing is we're putting these integers here. That are going to correspond to the place in the arguments. I'm having trouble following my own example. And then we would want to use the number 2 argument multiple times. This will make more sense in a second here. So we're going to type format. And so the first one, so in this order here, is going to be user's name, okay? And then the number once again, and again coffee. So what did we do here? So this is going to be the index 0, so the 0, the first, and then the third, or excuse me, the second. Let me rephrase that. So lists in Python are 0 index. That means when you're having something in a sequence, it starts at 0 and then goes 1, 2, 3. So user's name is index 0, and so that's going to be placed here in our string. 2020 is index 1, and that's going to be placed in this placeholder. And then the string coffee is index 2, and that's going to be placed anywhere we have this curly bracket 2, right? So that's the third value, index number 2. And that's how it works. So this will probably make more sense when we get into lists and indexing. Let's print our formatted string, and it looks like we expect, right? In the beginning there was coffee, Daniel. Now, in the year 2020, there's still much coffee. So, an alternative way to do this that's a little more convenient, a little more recent, is f-strings, formatted strings for short. So very similar. We're going to say f-string, but we start our string with quotes again, but we put an f in the beginning, okay? This declares it's going to be an f-string, a formatted string. Hello, we do curly brackets again, but now we can type the variable within the curly brackets. So this is the variable user's name, and then welcome to your homepage. Oop. What we want to do is we want to have a print statement here for our f string. There we go. Hello, welcome to your home page. So it's basically the same thing as before, but a different way to do it. A lot of people consider this easier to read rather than having to go to the end and look at the variables in the .format method or the arguments in the .format method and then having to like mentally place them in index 0, 2, or 1. So this is pretty common in 3.6 and later. I like it. But you can use whatever you want. What else? Oh, you can put not just variable names inside these placeholders. You can put any expression you want. So anything that would kind of, evaluate to a value. So math, for example, can do that. So we can say this is going to be an f string. The product of 3 and 5. So 3 and 5 are part of the string, but within our curly brackets we can put an expression. So in this case, 3 multiplied by 5. Oh, forgot my print statement again. F string. There we go. The product of 3 and 5 is 15. This makes sense. Let's take a look at an example where we have some division, right? The answer to 10 divided by 3. Okay, there we go. Kind of, almost. Not helping me. Print statement is missing. Okay, so see what it did? So it's obviously this is like a repeating number. It's going to be 3 onto infinity, and in this case it's going to automatically have a bunch of decimals there. But maybe we don't want that. Maybe we kind of want our string to display only 2 decimal places. Well, what can we do? Well, we can introduce something called string specifications, or format specifications, excuse me. So we can repeat what we did here. Okay, copy paste. Now at the end of our placeholder, right, we can use a special syntax, and in this case we are going to use the colon, and we're going to say 0.2. So 0.2 means I only want to show 2 decimal places worth of precision, and F is going to indicate it's a floating point number, right? So all I've done is do that, and it's going to truncate this so it only shows 2 decimal places, right? So there is quite a bit of options in this format specification mini language. So I've just gone to the official documentation, and there's a link in the written tutorial to go here. So you can see there's a lot of information here, but basically you can do quite a bit with your format specifications. So you have a lot of control how your string is going to be displayed when you use it. Cool, we're getting there. We're almost wrapping up. So something to note in Python 3 is that strings are all stored as Unicode. Now this is different than Python 2, and one of the reasons why it was a big change, a big breaking change that doesn't have backwards compatibility. So what is Unicode? Well, Unicode is a way of encoding characters or data, text data, so that it can be readily transferred between modern software in any language. So not just English characters, but characters in any language. So basically what this means is in Python 3, you should have no problem writing code in multiple languages. So we have a print statement here. My favorite color is blue. But, this is from Google Translate, I can use Chinese characters. I can use Hebrew characters. And these will work, and these are treated just like every other string in your data. Now, this is being displayed in the browser, and the browsers are pretty good at displaying whatever Unicode characters there are. If you are printing Unicode characters to a terminal, it's going to depend on what terminal or console you're using. Some work better than others. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so also emojis are part of Unicode. So that means you can put emojis in your strings. Again, what your editors that you're writing code in might have different issues displaying emojis. I know VS Code works really great. It shows up in the editor, it shows up in the output. So you can embed these. These are actual, they're not images, they're not like picture files. They're bytes that represent this, and then they're rendered by the browser into these things that look like images. But it's basically part of a string. It's a text-based data. And you can do all the same multiplication, addition, concatenation with these characters. So where can you get these Unicode characters? Well, your operating system, whether Windows or Mac or maybe sometimes Linux, will have some sort of character selector often. But what I tend to do, if I can get my link here, there we go, is go to the unicode.org full emoji list, and I can browse at my leisure. And what you'll notice here is there's a column called browser, right? And so this is not an image. This is the text character again. These are images, right? And these are just examples of how the Unicode character looks on different things. Apple, Google systems, Facebook, Twitter, Gmail, whatever it is. Okay, so if you want to use Unicode characters in your text and you don't have a character selector or something like that, you can highlight this in your browser, and then you can come back here and you can do a print statement, and then you can just paste it in there, and the way to go. This is a very long document, so you can usually use Control F and type something like fire, and it will search, basically you're keyword searching this entire page. But there's this text description over on the right hand column here, and keep hitting enter. You'll just go through all the options. So here is some fire. We can once again do emoji string. All right, we can mix spaces and whatever you want else in here. I don't know, what is this? This is a comment. Comments are cool. Hey, look, we have an example of something that doesn't render. It doesn't render the same way as the this part of the browser, so that's interesting. Hey, is there? Oh, we want the rocket, right? Everybody likes the rocket. We copy paste. We have fire, comments, and rockets, and then we can print our emoji string to text. So this is just an example of sometimes how these bytes of characters render differently on different systems. Cool. So that's going to wrap up this video tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. Quickly going to review what we've done. We have introduced a new data type called a string. It's our strs, the type as it's identified in Python. You can convert some variables or some values to strings, like integers and floats to strings using str and then passing the value in the parentheses. You can declare strings with either double quotes or single quotes. You can use the print function to print strings out to the console to see what the variables are in your code. It's helpful for debugging There are more advanced ways to debug, but this is a great way to just start. We learned how to use the slash, forward slash, which way is it leaning? Backslash. To escape characters, like do we want to use quotes in our strings. It's also very useful. Say you want to have, let's say you like to use single quotes, right? Because you don't have to hold the shift key down. So you can say you can escape, because you have to escape this apostrophe here in the beginning, right? You want to use a contraction. I can't stand holding shift, right? Otherwise that apostrophe would be considered a single quote and it would mess up. Okay, so we've manipulated some strings using concatenation. The addition operator, multiplication operator was the multiplication sign for duplicating strings. And we looked at a couple different methods to change to lowercase, uppercase, change to title case. We learned how to get some input from the user using the input method, built-in input function. We learned how to strip white space from it to improve our input. Let's see here. We learned how to format strings. We learned how to put the values of our variables and data into strings using the dot format and the fstrings method. And we introduced the format specification mini language for greater control. And we briefly mentioned Unicode in Python, that you can use multiple you can use characters in pretty much any language that's in Unicode. And emojis are a part of Unicode, so you can express yourself to everyone with maximum effort or efficiency or something like that. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I did the design a little differently, less editing, right? Just trying to get some content out. If you liked it, please hit like. If you didn't like it, hit dislike. Subscribe if you want to be notified of more content. You can follow me on Twitter at DanCanDoTV. And I will see you in the next one.